right, good evening, everybody. All right, my name is Greg Mitchell, and I'm the chairman of the IRF Secretariat, which is the legal entity, host, and title partner of the summit. So I want to welcome you to our partner dinner. Thank you. I feel like we're all family now, a nice big multi-faith family. And sorry we started late. We've had so much good content on the stage. We wanted to give everybody a chance to finish the plenary program. So the dinner's starting a little late, so apologize for that, but we're ready to get started. And I know everybody's already eating, so that was good. We don't have to give time for you to eat. So, all right, so we're excited now. We're going to have a couple of keynotes at the start from faith leaders, and then we're going to get into more of the IRF Secretariat partner program after we have the keynotes. And so first, I'm very honored to represent our first keynote speaker who traveled here from Greece. And it's His Eminence, the Most Reverend Gabriel, who's the Metropolitan of New Ionia, Philadelphia, Heracleion, and Chalcedon from the Greek Orthodox Church. I think I probably got that a little bit off, but hopefully it was close enough. But the Most Reverend Gabriel, he was born in 1976. He graduated from the Faculty of Theology of the University of Athens in Greece in 1999. In 2001, he ordained the Certificate to Specialization in Theology, Orthodox Theology, postgraduate degree from the Faculty of Theology of Freiburg, Switzerland, of the Orthodox Center of the Ecumenical Patriarch. He is a candidate of Doctor of the University of Athens and Geneva, while he holds a doctorate degree and Doctor in Political Science of the World Trade Organization. Just a little bit of his background. From 2004 to 2008, he ministered as associate of the Synodical Committee on Inter-Orthodox and Inter-Christian Relations of the Holy Synod of the Church of Greece and represented it on repeated occasions in international meetings. In 2004, he served as associate of the EU Commission in the office of the Greek member of the EU Commission on Social Affairs. He took part in numerous delegations of the Church of Greece to international and inter-Christian conferences abroad. And from 2006, he served for a number of years as high school teacher in Athens College. From January 2009, he has been on the board of directors of the Youth Foundation of the Holy Archdiocese of Athens in the capacity of vice chairman. He's a permanent member of the Central Committee of a few different groups, a member of the board of the Pastoral Training Foundation of the Holy Archdiocese of Athens. So 2014, he was elected, and on November 1, he was enthroned as Metropolitan of New Ionia and Philadelphia. So we are very honored to have Metropolitan Gabriel, so please welcome him. He just traveled from Greece and landed last night, so the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone, sisters and brothers in Christ. I would like to thank Greg Mitchell for his introduction and for his kind words. Thank you so much. And I wish to everyone good appetite, bon appétit à tous. You must be all very tired, so I will not be trying to tire you a little bit more. So I will say a few things about the purpose of this very important meeting. It is indeed a great joy for me being here with you, and distinct honor for my humble self as a bishop from the Orthodox Church of Greece being present here today. Come from Greece. Greece, as you know, it's the birthplace of democracy, of the spirit of dialogue and reconciliation, the spirit which created the Hellenic Christian civilization. Indeed, the world community does not face today a greater challenge than that of the peaceful coexistence of religions and cultures which ought to aim for peace and the holistic development of every human being. Religious freedom constitutes the core of the necessary presupposition for the aforesaid peaceful coexistence. In this regard, The initiative of this year International Religious Forum is indeed worthy of congratulations, as it promotes those presuppositions which we see them scattered in the various scriptural traditions, and especially in the Christian spiritual and patristic tradition. I would like to speak about love. Love, unconditional love for the other, and freedom are among the fundamental gifts of the Holy Spirit. The members of the Church receive these gifts and callings at the time of baptism, assuming also the responsibility of working towards their understanding and practical fulfillment of love and freedom in the personal and collective lives as Christians. Moreover, belief in Christ does not converse with hatred, bigotry, and intolerance, but promotes respect for and recognition of the religious convictions and expressions of every human being, every race and language. The Orthodox Church, through its theological teachings and age-old synodical practices, has significantly contributed towards the establishment of principles and practices of dialogue, reconciliation, and freedom of expression and religion, especially throughout our mutual respect and the sense of justice, as these have been experienced within the Bilenian Eastern Christian tradition. It is the Ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople, which from the earliest days of the beginning of the 20th century has been the foremost exponent of the spirit of inter-Christian dialogue and reconciliation. Through the well-known encyclicals of 1902, 1904, and 1920, addressed to the local Orthodox churches and to the Christian world, the Ecumenical Patriarchate gave the stimulus for establishing a path of theological or social dialogue, always aiming at the peaceful coexistence of men and at the exclusion of religions from political games and expediencies which are alien to the mission and nature of Christ's Church. World War I and the genocide of Armenians, Assyrians, and Greeks in the Ottoman Empire, and World War II, massive war crimes, crimes against humanity, as well as the Jewish Holocaust, should have provided the painful lesson for the world community and a clear path so that they will not allow for similar atrocities and bestialities to take place again. Christians across the world, Orthodox, Anglicans, Protestants, Orientals, Roman Catholics, following the relevant United Nations precedent and establishment and paradigm, decided in 1948 to establish the World Council of Churches, creating in this way a platform of theological dialogue, mutual understanding, and cooperation among Christians of different traditions. To this day, the 352 member churches of the World Council of Churches, having as their side also Roman Catholic observers, keep pursuing WCC's mission, which is to create a fellowship of traditions and tendencies, bringing to the table of dialogue Christians from all over the world, as well as representatives from all major different religions of the globe. The fundamental aim of the World Council of Churches is to promote peace, mutual respect, and love on the basis of our Lord's sacrifice on the cross, towards to the aim of visible unity. In 2002, at the initiative of the World Council of Churches, the Global Christian Forum was founded as yet another effort for establishing dialogue, contact, mutual understanding, and cooperation with Christians who belonged into a newer so-called charismatic Christian movements, but did not participate into the traditional structure of WCC. The forum aims at bringing together people from the globe to engage to dialogue and peacemaking process. The dialogues between Christians and the two great monotheistic religions of the world, Islam and Judaism, have already begun in 1980s at the initiative again of the Ecumenical Patriarchate and with the similar contribution of the late Orthodox Metropolitan of Switzerland, Damaskinos Papandreou. The highlight of this process was the establishment in 1999 in Geneva of the Foundation for Interreligious and Intercultural Research and Dialogue, with the support of very esteemed members, such as the Royal Highness Prince of the Kingdom of Jordan, the Chief Rabbi at that time of France, René Samuel Sirat, the late President of the United States of America, George W. Bush, Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger at that time, and then the future Pope Benedict XVI. Those are some of the names that I mentioned today. I also refer to the above institutions in order to extensive network of dialogue and communication that already exists, as well as of the efforts made throughout the 20th century towards Christian unity, peaceful coexistence, and also bridging people, creating safe space of exchange, of dialogue, of mutual cooperation. Unfortunately, persecution against Christians continues in many places across the globe, as we heard today. A war rages in Eastern Europe for now 4 months. Unfortunately, I'm referring to the war in Ukraine, while social injustices in Global South continue existing with all their dire consequences. So what needs to be done? Greater commitment from the part of international organizations, governments, and religions is needed, but also greater awareness during secondary education, support of existing dialogal structures, cooperation concerning major humanitarian issues such as violence, climate change, but also positive prioritization of religion in the life of as many people as possible. We have a duty to help people of faith conceive their power of change and betterment, condemn populism and fundamentalism, but also understand that religion must not be an instrument of violence, persecution, and discrimination, nor should become itself persecuted or discriminated. We need to embrace the spirit of love and freedom as a common base for the holistic prosperity of the world. Religious needs to work for peace and mutual respect, protecting the human dignity at any level. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Craig. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Your Eminence. Thank you so much. Love and freedom. Amen. All right, now we have a second keynote. We're also honored here to have Bishop Timateo of Asos. He's from the Sacred Orthodox Greek Archdiocese of Mexico, the Exarchate of Central America, Caribbean Islands, Colombia, and Venezuela, and he's representing the Ecumenical Patriarch of Constantinople. Please, Bishop Timateo. And Bishop Timateo and I were at a Religious Freedom Roundtable meeting down in Colombia a few years ago. Was that 2018? 2019, I think? So it's very good to have, and we have a Guillermo Smythe as his translator. So welcome, Bishop Timateo.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Hermanos y hermanas, muy buenas noches.
Brothers and sisters, good night.
Quiero iniciar mi intervención contando una pequeña historia.
I want to start my participation with a short history.
Un hombre caminaba por una montaña,
A man was walking through a mountain.
regresando a su pueblo.
He was coming back to his town.
Bajo la luz de la luna, fatigado, decidió tender su tienda de campaña, colocar su tienda de campaña.
And under the light of the moon, he decided to put a tent to
Y se
rest.
reclinó en su cama, pero la luz de la luna le permitía ver a lo lejos las otras montañas.
He sit down, but the light of the moon was allowed him to see far away into the mountains.
Y de pronto vio una sombra que se dirigía hacia él y le pareció monstruosa.
And suddenly he saw a shadow, but he couldn't recognize it, but the shadow looked like a monster.
Se quedó mirándola y vio que la sombra tomaba forma humana.
He kept looking at the shadow, and suddenly he realized that the shadow started to be shaped like a man.
En la medida en que se acercó se dio cuenta que era un ser humano.
As he got closer, he realized that he was a human being.
Cuando llegó a su lado se dio cuenta que no solamente era un ser humano, sino que era su propio hermano que venía a su encuentro.
And when he came very close, he realized it was not just a human being, but his brother.
Aquí hemos hablado de las relaciones de la religión al Estado,
Here we talk about the relationships of the religions with the state.
pero no hemos hablado quizá de lo que nosotros como líderes religiosos tenemos que hacer.
But maybe we haven't spoke about what us, religious leaders, have to do.
El 80% de la libertad religiosa la construimos nosotros, los líderes religiosos.
80% of freedom of religion, it gets built by us, religious leaders.
Donde somos minoría, cada uno pide libertad religiosa,
Where we are a minority, we demand freedom of religion for us.
pero donde somos mayoría la desconocemos.
But where we are a majority, sometimes we ignore it.
Por lo tanto, antes de hablar de armonizar las relaciones con el Estado,
That's why before talking about the relationships with the state,
se hace necesario armonizar las relaciones entre las religiones.
it's necessary to create harmony between religions.
¿Y cómo se logra esto?
And how do you achieve this?
Primero hay que conocerlos.
First, we need to know each other.
Poder exponerte mi fe sin imponértela.
Being able to talk about my faith without imposing it
Que
on
tú me
you.
que tú me expongas tu fe sin que me la impongas.
And that you tell me about your faith without imposing it on myself.
No hay diálogo si no te conozco.
There is no dialogue if I don't know you.
¿Cómo pretendemos unificar en torno a lo esencial a las religiones si no nos conocemos los unos a los otros?
How do we pretend to create freedom of religion if we don't know each other?
Eso implica derrumbar muros y edificar puentes
That means that we have to tear down walls and build bridges.
para no generar conceptos equivocados del que pertenece a otra religión.
So you don't get the wrong concept of somebody else, of another religion.
Ese ser humano que más allá de su fe es mi hermano porque tiene la misma naturaleza.
That human being beyond his faith is my brother because we are sons of God.
Una vez que nos conocemos, nos reconocemos.
Once we recognize each other, we understand each
Te
other.
reconozco como musulmán, te reconozco como cristiano, como hinduista, como lo que seas.
I recognize you as a Muslim, Hindu, etc.
Y entiendo tu realidad para que entiendas la mía.
And I understand your reality so you can understand mine.
Una vez que te reconozco, una que te conozco y te reconozco, podemos llegar a unificar criterios y trabajar sobre lo esencial.
Once I know you and I recognize you, we can build criteria to work together.
Pero sobre todo tendremos que entender que hemos de aprendernos a amar los unos a los otros.
But more than anything, we need to learn to love each other.
Esto no lo genera una ley.
This is not made by a law.
Esto no lo decreta un Estado.
This is not something that the states
Eso lo
order.
construimos usted y yo.
That you build together. We build that together.
Así que la libertad religiosa nace de dentro de nosotros.
So freedom of religion is built and born inside us.
A ver si lo digo, como al estilo griego, de manera ontológica.
I'm going to say it on a Greek style, an ontologic way.
Y eso implica entonces que una vez que nos amamos, podemos trabajar juntos sobre las realidades que lastiman a la humanidad.
Once we love each other, we can work together and help humanity.
No se puede mirar los problemas sociales sobre una mirada ideológica.
You cannot solve the human problems when we look at each other
El
as different ideologies.
el hambre que lastima al musulmán es la misma hambre que lastima a un cristiano, incluso que lastima a un ateo.
The hunger that damages a Muslim is the same hunger that affects a Hindu, etc.
Quiero recordar hoy la regla de oro.
Today I want to remind you of the golden rule.
Quiere para los demás lo que quieres para ti.
You need to want for others what you want for yourself.
Y no hagas a los demás lo que no quieres para ti.
And don't do to others what you don't want done to yourself.
Todo derecho implica un deber.
Every right has a right.
Quiero que me respeten mis derechos.
I want that you to respect my rights.
Entonces tengo el deber de respetar el del otro.
So I have to respect your rights too.
Y tengo derecho a gozar de la libertad religiosa.
And I have the right to have freedom of religion.
Yo vengo de Colombia
I come from Colombia
y de Venezuela.
and Venezuela.
Acabamos de vivir una crisis.
We had a crisis.
La pandemia y la migración que salió de Venezuela.
The pandemic and the migration that came from
Y
Venezuela.
nos unimos todos.
And we work together.
Católicos,
Catholic,
musulmanes,
Muslims,
Scientology
Scientology,
y todas las judíos,
all religions working together.
todos a dar
Everyone
una respuesta.
to give an answer.
Termino diciendo,
I end by saying,
hace 8 años empezamos un proceso para construir la política pública
8 years ago, we started a process to create a public a policy for freedom of religion.
y empezamos por conocernos.
And we started by knowing each other.
Nos reconocimos
We recognized each
y
other,
trabajamos juntos.
and we were able to work
A
together.
eso se le llama la política pública de libertad religiosa de la República de Colombia.
And we created the public policy of freedom of religion in the Republic of Colombia.
No pretendamos solucionar con leyes
We don't have to just answer and handle things with laws,
lo que nosotros como hombres de fe,
but us, the men of faith
mujeres de fe,
and women of faith,
tenemos el deber de construir.
we need
Muchas
we
gracias.
have the
Dios los
duty to
bendiga.
build. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. And building on that, so it's my honor now to announce, this is the IRF Secretariat's partner dinner. What I want to do with the rest of the time here is kind of just summarize the new project. With a generous grant from Templeton Religion Trust, IRF Secretariat is just now beginning a new 3-year project. And it's called Religious Freedom Roundtables, Cooperative Engagement and Global Coordination Phase 2. Templeton gave us a grant in 2020, and that was a planning grant, it ended up being like a 15, 16-month planning grant. With that grant, that then rolled into IRF Summit 2021 last year. And after IRF Summit 2021, we were invited to submit a proposal for a 3-year project. I'm happy to announce we just got that grant. It just came through, and we're just now starting a brand new 3-year project. And I want to summarize that project for you and kind of walk you through what we're going to be doing, because we're going to be inviting a lot of you to work with us. It's really like a big team effort, and it's really a grant for the global movement. So that's why I want to share it with you, and we're going to share some of our team members and some of the key people we're going to be working with. Real quick, and then we're going to bring up the team. I just want to summarize what it is. It's going to be, there's 3 key activities, and the problem we're trying to solve is this. There's never, and I kind of talked about this yesterday morning at the beginning of yesterday afternoon at the Civil Society Congress. There's never been more advocacy and government actions to advance religious freedom, yet persecution has never been worse. The global movement needs new approaches. And this is from our executive summary. So the purpose of our project here is to lead the way to better outcomes by conceptualizing and institutionalizing a new approach centered on cooperative engagement, which is engagement that respects and protects the other's human dignity and liberty of conscience. And also it focuses on strategic planning and coordination of actions across the bottom up of civil society and the top down of governments and parliamentarians. And the goal is to increase our impact. And there's activities organized into 3 categories. One is global events. This is the Global IRF Summit. We want to catalyze IRFs like regional, national, and even local summits around the world. So that's 1, summits around the world. 2 is building the global infrastructure. The summits catalyze action, catalyze the establishment of regional secretariats that can help set up new religious freedom roundtables and then coordinate those roundtables within their region. And that's a global infrastructure that can become a sustainable infrastructure for a variety of multi-faith actions, like education, multi-faith relationship building. Like you said, we have to know each other before we can work together. But then multi-faith actions in the public square, like what we do at the Roundtable, where we all share our stories of persecution. Then we all pull together and engage governments together in multi-faith fashion as equal citizens. So that's the second piece. The third piece is global leadership and coordination. And we're going to have a little discussion on what that's going to entail. But we're going to build a global leadership council that does goal setting and strategic planning, and kind of developing strategic plans and initiatives that we can then use to raise money to fund the execution of those plans. Again, the design, or the purpose is to increase our impact. Anyway, that's the executive summary. That's it in a nutshell. With that, I want to introduce the team that's going to be, the IRF Secretariat team that's going to be delivering this 3-year project. And first, I want to call up Nadine Mayenza. Nadine just ended her, As you know, Nadine was chair of USERF. She had a great tenure at USERF. And lucky for us, but as soon as her term was ending, our new project was beginning.
Like the day after.
Yeah, exactly. And we were in Uzbekistan together. So I'm happy to announce, I think a lot of you saw this announcement earlier today, but I'm happy to announce, and we're very lucky and we're very blessed to announce that Nadine Mayenza is now the president of IRF Secretariat.
Thank you.
So I'll be the chairman and CEO. Nadine's going to be the president. We're going to work together, and she can continue to travel, get on the ground, and talk to people who really can make a difference in each of these countries. Like she's been to Northeast Syria, Northern Iraq, lots of other places, but she spends a lot of time on the ground, a lot of time, and going into conflict areas, putting her own safety at risk and working with people on the ground and developing relationships, not only with the faith leaders, civil society leaders, but government leaders as well. So, we're looking forward to having you be part of this and being an integral part of the project.
Honored to be a part.
And then I just want the other members of the team to stand up. We have Paul Murray and Simran Singh Stoopnagel. You've seen them on stage. They're the vice chairs of IRF Secretariat. And then over here, Annie McKinney. She's serving as our operations director now. And she's the assistant director of the summit here, so thank you, Annie. So that's the team to start with. We're going to be expanding the team. But now I just want to have a series of short discussions, brief discussions, and just previews of some of the activities we're going to be working on and introducing you to some of the key people that they're going to be working with. So first up, I want to bring up a couple of people for a discussion about the Global Leadership Council and kind of conceptualizing what that might be. Chris Seipel, who's an external advisor to Templeton Religion Trust, President Emeritus of Institute for Global Engagement. He was the co-founder of the IRF Roundtable. So we're happy to have Chris here. Bob Roberts with Multi-Faith Neighbors Network. Jan Figel. Jan Figel was the former EU Special Envoy for freedom of religion or belief outside the EU. And Sir Charles Hoare from the United Kingdom. He was integral in the Bishop of Truro's review of the UK government's actions to protect persecuted Christians. And before we start, I want to recognize and have everybody give a round of applause to Ambassador Sam Brownback. We wouldn't be here without Ambassador Brownback, and really IRF Secretariat wouldn't have this project without Ambassador Brownback really embracing the IRF Roundtable model and the whole multi-faith model when he became ambassador at large, and plugging into the Roundtable network and asking us to meet weekly, and having that weekly touch with all the faith communities and hearing all of our stories week in and week out and figuring out what he could do from his job as ambassador and really pushing the State Department to engage on a lot of these issues wherever it could engage. He even gave us ideas on what we could do from civil society. So really, we're building on top of the engagement and the support you gave us, and so we're grateful and thank you so much. And he's going to be part of the Global Leadership Council, which you're going to hear a little bit about here. So we're going to continue working with Ambassador Brownback, so thank you. Now, we don't have a lot of time, but we just want to do a little discussion here. And we've talked a little bit about this, but here's what we're going to do. This is the vision, and I want to just hear what you guys think about this, just a couple minutes of your ideas, and we might go back and forth for about 15 minutes. But again, the vision is this: providing strategic planning for the global movement. So working with people out in the global movement all over the world, but the idea is to build a global leadership council of former government officials, like former ambassadors at large for international religious freedom, former special envoys, former foreign ministers even, former members of Congress and Parliament, faith leaders, civil society leaders, and really, people who have been in this movement for a long time. and developing strategic plans that can be used to empower alignment of all the efforts in the global movement, and then coordination of actions so that there's strategic plans that we can align with, and that kind of keeps everybody pointed in the direction of strategic objectives and successful outcomes. So that's the first thing. And what could this look like, having a global leadership council developing these plans? But then also, here's the other idea, and this is just an idea, and we would love your feedback on any of this, but a global fund. So as the Global Leadership Council pumps out strategic plans and concept notes and strategic initiatives, we could use those specific projects and plans to raise money into a global fund that would provide the resources to fund all the execution of all these strategic plans. And again, what could that look like? And then the final thing is, there's been the concepts of centers of excellence. You just heard we signed an MOU on the plenary stage just now, and a center of excellence is part of that. So what could a center of excellence do, and how could that contribute to what we're talking about here, where we're laying out these plans, and really then inviting everybody in the global movement to provide inputs on those plans and have ownership in those plans, and everybody's a stakeholder and working together and coordinating together and coordinating across the global networks of governments, parliamentarians, and civil society. But with that, I want to start with Chris Seipel.
Okay, let's start with me. Thank you, Greg, and thanks to everybody for being here. You might know or you might not know that I happen to be the fourth of 8 Marines and 2 generations of Seipels. And if you know anything about Marines, there you have a bias toward action. And I also happen to be the son of the first ambassador at large for religious freedom, Bob Seipel, who is away and could not be here for the events. But he and my mom loved the State Department, but when they left, they felt that they needed to fund or build an organization, the Institute for Global Engagement, to be nimble enough to respond in ways that governments couldn't. And to be, instead of being reactive, be proactive. And instead of trying to get people out of jail, transform the structures of persecution so they don't go to jail in the first place. That's a long game. That's about strategy. And what I love about what the summit has become and the movement has become through a lot of leadership, but especially with Nadine and Sam and Greg, you have this top-down, bottom-up approach, grassroots and governments working hand in glove together, and their intersection is actually the point of sustainability. So then the question becomes, how do you make something sustainable overseas? Because if this is an American thing or an English-speaking thing, then it's a failure. Full stop. So the question has to become, how do we in this country come alongside folks in other countries, invited to come alongside them? They might not have it all figured out, by the way, and oh, by the way, we don't either, and come alongside and do religious freedom summits and training, etc., in places that want it, according to the best of their culture, according to the best of their majority faith, according to the best of their non-majority faiths, as we walk together in the same direction, because we do believe that this thing called dignity, this liberty of conscience, this freedom of religion or belief, is something that is universal. So my biggest principle in all of that is twofold: top down and bottom up. Go where you're invited. I guess it's threefold. And come alongside the principles that are already existing in the local culture and faith. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Chris. Jan? Now, Jan has been part of the Global Leadership Council. We put together an initial Global Leadership Council with the planning grant. So Jan Figel, David Anderson, Joe Grabowski was part of it until he passed away, unfortunately. And then Brian Grimm joined it. But Jan.
Yeah. Thank you, Greg, not only for this introduction, but for your work. We have started last year, and I'm glad that we are back again, not only with Sam, but Katrina Lantos and many. I think that if you mentioned that money or fundraising is important task, or what is the most important, I think, is to get together like-minded people. Because when you get 2, 3, 20, 300 and so many like we can see, we can share hope and commitments and a lot of activities. And I think that's the major task, vision for global leadership. To put together like-minded people committed to the cause of universal fundamental human right, which is actually our civilizational mission. Because freedom of conscience, freedom of thought, conscience, and religion builds civilization. And vice versa. If it's missing, we see inhumanity growing, genocide in place, again and again and again, instead of never again. How to do it? I think that you are sitting on comfortable chairs, but they are stable because they have 4 legs. And these legs are important, each one separately and together even more. I think we should make all efforts, professional efforts, in order to put together governmental, parliamentary, civil society, and faith-based organization contributions, movements. Like next week, ministerial in London. There are many smaller, bigger activities, and if we succeed to put them in one line, one orientation, I think we can make a difference in 21st century, and we need to make a difference. The whole world speaks not only about war, but other issues like climate change, because it makes negative effect. We need religious freedom climate change, because it concerns millions and millions of people in daily life, permanently, and tendency is negative. So either we stop and reverse, or consequences will be really very inhuman. And the second point in this direction, 4 legs, stable movement, global religious freedom movement, is about the way how we should deal within these 4 autonomous strands. I think it's about communication. We need to share, we need to know, we need to raise awareness. Second is coordination, at least as much as we can, coordinate between independent autonomous strands or lines of effort. And the third one is cooperation. Yes, real cooperation, because without cooperation we are weak, we are divided. And in cooperation there is unity, synergy, and success, which means help to those who are persecuted, who are voiceless or defenseless. And this is our task, human, simple task.
Thank you, Jan. You mentioned like-minded people. I'm going to turn to Nadine. I mean, we're all like-minded up here. But the benefit of these events, and it started with the ministerials. I first met Nadine at a ministerial. You know, and that's what in the summit now. These ministerials and the summits gather all of us. You know, and you find, I mean, we're all of like mind to varying degrees, but you really get the network at these events, and that's how I met Nadine. And right away we could see with like mind, right? So we've been kind of going back and forth ever since then. So it's really good to bring everybody together. But you just coming out of USURF now, you know, and you've seen a lot working with governments and dealing with governments, and you know, how can we? What do you think about putting all this together?
Well, you know, the one thing I learned, and I'll mention a little bit, you've probably heard me say this a few times recently, is, you know, being involved in a government agency really helped me understand the limitations of government. You know, often government interaction is necessary, but it's really not sufficient. As Chris was saying, you've got to have the bottom up to match the top down. And, you know, we have to consider the fact that conditions are deteriorating around the world, and there's a lot of reasons for that, and they're complex. But certainly social media, politicians getting better at dividing people in order to take advantage of the situation, disinformation. There's all sorts of things. We can spend all night talking about it, but that's not important. The key is, I think, with what Ambassador Brownback has done and Greg and setting this infrastructure that we now have. We have this base to work from. We have these IRF roundtables around the world. We have these ministerials. We have these, wonderful groups. Jan and others have been a part of the pulling the countries together. And we're at this point now where the top-down is being synthesized, where there's that interaction, there's the socialization, religious freedom now has been lifted as a priority. We've got grassroots work happening. We've a lot of organizations on the ground like IGE and others doing important work. So we keep hearing this word strategic and really, and also ground-driven, because we can't go into a country and tell them, this is how you do it. It's more of we come alongside the people that have those instincts on the ground. And so I think we have to really rethink how conditions are not moving in the right direction. So how do we right this? How do we turn things the way they need to go to get where we start seeing more increases in religious freedom around the world? And I think that's what's so important about the Global Leadership Council, bringing these folks that have so much experience together and really thinking through how to do this. And certainly welcome all of you guys that are all committed to the movement, really trying to step back and think outside the box. Like, how do we really make it a better place for people who are suffering right now and can't practice their faith, persecution, discrimination? How do we go from here? And I think that's really, to me, what this project is really all about, this grant and this new focus of let's hunker down and let's take a look at this again and see what we can do to make it work better.
Thanks, Nadine. Bob and I were on the train in Uzbekistan a couple weeks ago, and I was kind of laying this out. He was taking notes, and I think when he was looking at the Global Leadership Council and then the potential of a global fund, it kind of clicked, and he thought this could work. So what do you think, Bob?
I don't think it's just a matter of can it work, it needs to work. And I want to thank you, Greg, for what you've done, and Ambassador Brownback. And Miss Brownback, thank you for, I hope that's who you are. His arm is around me. But I want to thank you for your husband supporting and helping. But Ambassador, Senator, Governor, Republican, presidential candidate, I wish, but be that as it may, I think that this has to work. So let me speak from it from a little different perspective. I'm not top down. I'm friends with a lot of leaders, but it's not because I'm a diplomat or an intellectual. I'm a pastor. And I stumbled into the world and found out that we pastors unintentionally were making a mess of things. And I think what we're missing is how do we deal with the imams, the pastors, the rabbis, the priests? They're not a part of this conversation. And frankly, the really influential ones don't want to be a part of this conversation. They want to grow a big church, a mosque, a synagogue, and to be a part of this conversation is problematic because your own tribe will come after you when you start doing this. But it's critical because nobody can raise the temperature or lower it like a cleric. And so if we could have a framework, Greg, where this is all thought about strategically, and there's gradually we're raising up pastors and imams and rabbis, because really they're not the goal. The goal are their congregants. It's the Christians, the Muslims, the Jews, the Buddhists, the Hindus at the grassroots level. And the challenge also with that is, as a cleric, as a man of God, a lot of times you speak for God whether you really did or not. So you don't have a tendency to listen. We define religious freedom by what's going on with my tribe. And one of the biggest lessons I had to learn was it's just not about Baptist religious freedom, even though we did come up with the concept with Roger Williams. But anyhow, be that as it may, it's really not just about Baptist religious freedom. It's about religious freedom for Muslims. And so that matters. Religious freedom for Jews, for Buddhists, for Hindus. And so if I can make the cleric the hero, I get at the grassroots of them, I think this is the opportunity to do that. So I think we have a moment. And the bad news is the work that I do is growing with David and Majid because we're so polarized. And there's a lot of clerics that are frustrated and they don't know what to do. And if we can give them tools and resources, Greg, and if we can put together this network from top, because you've got to have it all, top down, bottom up. I mean, whoever thought of a pastor as a peacemaker? But it's possible if we could do some of this. So I'm excited about it.
Thanks, Bob. Charles, Sir Charles, He's going to be joining the IRF Secretariat team as well. We still have to work out his role, but he's our guy in London now. You know, and when we've got the ministerial coming up next week, so we're going to have some good events and meetings over there in London as well. But and he did a lot of traveling as to part of putting that report together for the Bishop of Truro that went to the foreign minister and has informed UK government actions. But what do you think about this based on your travels and your involvement in the movement so far?
Thanks, Greg, and greetings from our friends in London. I'm sorry I'm one of the few to come because they're all rather busy preparing for next week, but they send their warmest regards. Greg, I'm really excited. I think, as Chris was saying, it's the combination of the top-down and the grassroots. And very often it's about seizing the moment. Just an example, Bishop Philip was asked by our foreign minister to run a review looking into how effective our foreign ministry was in supporting persecuted Christians. And that came out of nowhere. The backstory, which some of you may know, is that when Jeremy Hunt, our foreign minister, was a teenager, he was given a book by somebody to read. And that book was by Brother Andrew. And he was completely blown away. In fact, it inspired him to go into politics. And he thought, if I ever get into a position of influence, the one thing I want to do is to make sure that the people I read about when I read Brother Andrew's book, that they are not still having a tough time, and that the British diplomats are supporting them. So that opportunity literally came out of nowhere, and the review that Bishop Philip conducted was specifically focused at persecuted Christians. But Bishop Philip took the view, I think correctly, that to keep the focus narrow just on the Christian communities would have been to lose the opportunity. And so the recommendations that the review put forward were FORB for all, freedom of religion or belief for all, asking the British government to step up and to commit to the vital task of protecting the freedoms in Article 18. And amazingly, all of the recommendations of the review, all 22 recommendations, were accepted by the Prime Minister. Then they were accepted by the second Prime Minister and the third Prime Minister. We've had quite a run of Prime Ministers, and all the foreign ministers too. And as a direct result of friendships across the pond, we now have a wonderful equivalent of ambassador. Fiona Bruce MP is our special envoy, the Prime Minister's special envoy for freedom of religion or belief. She is chairing the current alliance and hugely delighted to be doing so. And she will be running the ministerial next week. I've been talking a lot about top-down, but Greg, I think you know that you inspired Bishop Philip equally, as you did, Ambassador Raback. And he recognized that some of those recommendations might not go anywhere. The government might have just accepted them, filed the report. He understood the brilliance of the Roundtable in keeping our diplomats and our officials accountable, holding them to their commitments. And so Bishop Philip decided that we needed a roundtable in London. And 3 years ago, we launched the FORB Forum. I'm afraid we decided roundtable was not right for the UK, so we went for a forum. That started just with a few groups, but I'm thrilled to tell you that we now have almost 100 organizations in the UK who have committed to that forum. We meet every month or so to discuss issues of concern. The Prime Minister's Special Envoy comes to the meeting, she listens, she responds on behalf of the government, and she commits to taking the concerns away and presenting them to ministers. So it's as you're saying, Chris, it is the combination of the top down and the bottom up. And we're a tiny island over the sea, over the ocean, but we're also learning from what's happening here, and we're really, really excited. And I hope some of you at least will be coming to London next week. If you are, please give me a ring.
All right, thank you. Please give them a hand. Thank you, everybody. We don't have time. I wish we could go more and we could go deeper, but thanks for the preview. We're going to bring a few more people up now. And I know we're running a little late. You know, we started half an hour late, so we've got 3 more quick previews that are going to be shorter than this. But if you have to go, I understand. Feel free. But we're going to bring up a few other people now that we're going to be working with. This one, so you heard a little bit about strategic planning, Global Leadership Council. What kind of strategic initiatives might be developed by the strategic planning and the Global Leadership Council? Sorry, Nadine, you can come back up.
I'm actually stayed.
Oh, there you go. Sorry, good. I thought everybody
I
cleared.
have my phone so I can look
James
at
Chen with Institute for Global Engagement. Jeremy Barker. Is Jeremy here?
He is. Yep.
Religious Freedom Institute. Salah Ali. He's with our roundtable, the Religious Freedom and Non-Discrimination Roundtable in Iraq. You know, Jeremy's there in Iraq now too. And Shireen Tabor.
Hey, how are you?
Empowerment Women's, or Empowerment, is it Women's Media? There you go. But, and we're at the beginning here. If you all have ideas, you know, and we will, when we start developing plans, we will put them out and invite you to provide any feedback you have. You know, we want this to be an interactive process, and we're just at the beginning here, so we don't have this all worked out yet. But I just want to hear from everybody. You know, we're going to be setting up summits, we're going to be setting up roundtables, potentially secretariats as coordinating hubs for roundtables. A couple of you are doing roundtables. James has been part of some strategic initiatives that are building, like in Central Asia, Vietnam. Shireen's coming through with some great, you know, women's initiatives. I mean, Nadine's been in the Middle East. Let's just go down the line here on what kind of strategic initiatives you think we can develop, like with this project and the model we're talking about. Shireen.
Yeah. So I direct Empower Women Media, and we're passionate about helping women to promote religious freedom around the world. So we gather women, we equip them, we educate them, mobilize them to tell their stories through religious freedom. So we have a media fellowship, a film festival, and an online course. This year we focused on Pakistan. It's a tough area. We thought, let's go there. We had some support stakeholders. And we had a cohort of 30 women that we trained, and then they produced their short films, and we had a film festival. In fact, Ambassador Brownback in the past has been to one of our film festivals online, 2020. People told us it was impossible, but we convened them at Islamabad Hotel. June 19th, we had a room like this filled with a film festival of short women's films telling why religious freedom is good for peace and security, it's good for women's rights, and it's good for thriving business economies. So my point is, it is possible. We think women are the key to unlocking these difficult countries for religious freedom. You can't argue with your mother or your sister or your wife if she's talking about religious freedom. What we saw after the film festival, that we had media coverage in the morning news in Pakistan, the evening news, Dawn newspaper, which is the largest English-speaking newspaper. There's something about mobilizing women. So I think we're just unlocking that, and we'd love to do more.
Thank you. Salah and Jeremy are both working together in Iraq, but Salah can start off.
Thank you. Well, actually, I think the religious freedom itself in the Middle East is a bit difficult, and it's not that easy when we talk about it. Because freedom itself is just, it's not being experienced like when you talk about freedom. People don't understand it really, because many countries lived in for ages under dictatorship. And when it comes to freedom of religion, it's worse. And people don't like absorb the idea of freedom. I think back in 2020, we ran a small survey and we ask a question, what does religious freedom means to people in the middle, and the survey was in the middle and the south of the country, and I think it was around 70% of people thought that religious freedom means to change your religion, and is a part of the missionary work in Iraq. So that's when you work in that kind of community is really difficult. So you have to be quite sensitive, and I think from my perspective, I think the academic field is being overlooked, and I think we need to do more work on academic field. And I believe also, because from our experience at Roundtable in Iraq, it was really, I don't know, just it was quite emotional, and really we had great positive feedback, and we had, now we have great connection with the communities from different background, with the government even. And we have great relationship with yourself, with the UK FOB as well, and we growing really fast. The reason, I think, because we know the local context. That's one thing. And the other one is, I think we need more roundtable in the Middle East. But I think we should also look at the language we use. I mean, if you run a roundtable in English language in the Middle East, it's really difficult, because most of the imams and most of the people and religious leaders really, they speak Arabic or other language. So I think we have to be careful. And also we need to coordinate between those roundtable. And I think it'll be great. And also, I mean, in the past, we had an issue with promoting gender in Iraq, because people who promoted that particular agenda, they were not quite, I think, experienced, and they were not quite knowledgeable about the subject itself. So I think here now, when you talk about religious freedom, we need really expertise in this area. Otherwise we get, because the point is that in our region, when you talk about religious freedom, you get tough response and hard and rigid. The reason, not because they are aggressive, because they love their religion. So you have to be careful when you talk to them about religious freedom. So I think this in academic field, the local, and that kind of initiative. Also, it's bringing other sectors and other. I mean, we did some exhibition. I mean, between art, how art playing, promoting religious freedom, and the response was great. Really, people liked it. So that kind of initiative. I'm sure there's lots of. We put with Jeremy like maybe 2,000-3,000 projects together, but we'll see. Thank you.
Jeremy.
Yeah, well, I think we've already heard a lot of good ideas, and it's encouraging looking at the panel that was up here just before, and just looking at how there really has been a generational shift of continuing to cultivate and see from some of the early pioneers of the movement, and then the things that Chris and Nadine and Greg, that you're doing, and how that's now going to another generation and another generation. It really is going global, and it's not necessarily new ideas, but it's contextualizing them and replicating what works, adapting it into the languages, the cultures, and learning from that. We're seeing a lot that's really happening as we create space for these conversations, for relationships to happen, and then how we put that into practice, that bias toward action that was mentioned earlier, and that is having an impact. As mentioned on the plenary stage, making the case that things are broken, that what's there now isn't working well, doesn't really need to be made. That people are feeling that. I mean, you have communities that are displaced and driven out over and over and over again. There's a search for solutions, and that's where religious freedom is so vital in providing those solutions. Another thing that I think we're seeing momentum is breaking down some of the silos of between humanitarian assistance, development assistance, getting that aligned to advance religious freedom and building awareness and understanding of that. There's been really good things out of the UK recently, increasing awareness about that, and that unlocks resources and really create space for meaningful opportunities. And then it's the work of collaboration, it's relationships that happen in the context of things like this. So lots of work to be done, but it's the privilege to be about doing it.
Thanks, Jeremy. James, you've done a lot of work. IGE's been in Central Asia for a long time and Vietnam. Like, what do you see, the potential, for what we're talking about building on here?
Yeah, and it's really great to have Greg come out with us to Uzbekistan past couple of times. I see our work as a little bit like building the infrastructure for religious freedom, building the plumbing and the electrical stuff that makes it work. What do I mean by that? We have kind of a multi-track or multi-dimensional effort in these two countries, Vietnam, Uzbekistan. Admittedly, they're not perfect, but I think most people would agree that compared to 5 or even 10 years ago, it's very significant progress. And we want to be able to build upon that progress, and we want to be able to come alongside and encourage that and make it even more. And so some of the things that we are doing are training programs, such as in the religion and rule of law, working with government officials and religious leaders on the nuts and bolts of the legal codes and the laws and the policies that are in those countries. Cross-cultural religious literacy. How do we help different religious communities to engage each other and to work with each other and to mutually support one another? And then also multi-faith neighbors networks, clerical relationship building. This is something that we've partnered very much with Pastor Bob and his group with, getting together the clerics, the leaders, the pastors, rabbis, imams, and whatever religious leaders are in that country together and to build those relationships. And a key part of that are also partnerships with in-country partners. We've partnered with the BYU's International Center for Law and Religion Studies, greatly on the law end. And so it's kind of this top-down and a bottom-up engagement that we're working on in these two countries. And so we're pretty excited about that. Thanks.
Thanks, James. Nadine, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I just want to say I hope you get the sense of how ambitious this is. We're talking about not having a strategic plan, but a lot of strategic initiatives at one time. We have, like Bob said, now is the time. We have to right this ship. And you see these practitioners that are working on the ground and seeing real progress and doing the real work. And so, we need a combination of people with all the different skill sets coming together and really coordinating with real funding, with strategic plans, and being able to really monitor this and look for movement. And also, as we've been trying to highlight during the program, the plenaries, to have some success stories, even if they're small. We need to go back to places where we've seen, like, how did Raqqa go from being the ISIS caliphate to just, having a bunch of Muslims show up at the opening of the Armenian church and it was no big deal. I mean, how does that happen in 5 years? Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, where we've seen some improvements, like how and why. And so I think this is super ambitious but really exciting. And so all of you there, we'd love to talk to you about your ideas and where your strengths are, what you'd like to be a part of. We're hoping everyone kind of steps into where their gifting is and where their interests are, and that we can really build a movement, because it's going to take a lot of hands.
Yeah. All right, thank you all. Thank you so much. All right, 2 more speed panels, just a couple more previews for you. Paul Murray. I'm going to have Paul run this one. Sir Charles again. This one we just want to talk about. These are some of the regional partners that are setting up secretariats and roundtables already. Eric Roux from the EU, Brussels. Wade Kuzak, Central Asia. He's in Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. Reverend William Devlin in East Africa. And Anila Ali, you want to come up, Anila? I'm going to have Paul run this one so I can get a drink of water.
Thanks, Greg. And we will move this along. As we talk about the Religious Freedom Roundtables, the success is all of you and the work that you do when you collaborate together. One of the things that the Global Peace Foundation has done, and where I serve as its International Vice President for Religious Freedom Initiatives, is that we helped establish the Religious Freedom Roundtable in South Korea, in one of our locations. And through the sponsorship of the Global Peace Foundation, we're able to put together a great team in South Korea that is working on issues focused on North Korea. And as a result of that, focusing on that, we've been able to hold several roundtables convenings along with some high-level roundtable convenings that brought in North Korea defectors to be able to speak about religious freedom and the need in North Korea. So that's one of the things that we've done with the Global Peace Foundation. And then also we're doing a lot of work in Nigeria focused on the issues they are bringing. Today we're very excited to have both the Muslim and Christian leaders coming together to sign a declaration on our plenary stage earlier today. So having said that, that's the kind of work that we're involved in. And so I'd like to ask first, Wade Cusack, in the Central Asia area, if you could talk a little bit about the work of the roundtables and the necessity of the collaboration.
The roundtable, everything started from including roundtable initiative. And the first delegation of the roundtable came to Kazakhstan in 2013 to boost the dialogue between Kazakh government and civil society and American-based NGOs. So now we developed a partnership up to the point that we are planning to start 9 roundtables in 9 Kazakhstani cities, ongoing roundtables that would be created based on our roundtable here in Washington, D.C., and connected to the IRF Secretariat here in Washington, D.C. So it's going to be part of the global network. And maybe some of you heard today, the government officials from Kazakhstan confirmed the commitment to do so. And in November, we're going to start our first roundtables and continue through the next year, finishing in June. And our goal is to establish, again, 9 roundtables in 9 Kazakhstani cities that would discuss religious freedom issues in the country and participate in the global movement. And I think it's a great outcome of all these years of engagement with Kazakhstani government. And in case of success, it would be unprecedented, not only for Central Asia, but I think it's going to be a great model and precedent for the world.
Excellent, thank you very much. You know, I think one of the things very important, as we've seen tonight with Ambassador Brownback's girlfriend, that women play a very important role in really helping us to move things forward. And it's good to have women involved and engaged, because really, without them, we can't really move into the areas we need to. So, Anila, if you can share a little bit about the work that you're doing around the roundtables in Pakistan and the other areas that you're involved in.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Murray. A year ago, I became engaged with I'd heard a lot about it. Ambassador Brownback is a celebrity within the clerical circle in Pakistan. I'd heard his name even before I met him. And been working as a woman, Muslim, American after 9/11. I realized that a lot of the Muslims, especially I hail from Pakistan, I was born there, don't understand religious freedom. They don't understand the reason why I am able to pray here is because of the religious freedom. Educating is a very big part of it. So as I learned from the Secretariat about the roundtable format, a year ago we started. We had the conversation in Karachi. Karachi being it has a vibrant, very robust minority community. Many religions do coexist despite problems, and it's modern. That conversation just encouraged me to think, what about the Christian persecution that's actually happening in Punjab, and the north we know is a problem. So I think we became a little ambitious, and we thought we're going to try Punjab and then Peshawar. It happened that Pastor William Siraj was martyred, he was killed, and right after that, a Shia mosque in Peshawar was also attacked. And by that time, I had enough encouragement to say, I think they understand religious freedom, they understand that I'm Pakistani, a Muslim, and I can go there and start this conversation and educate the people there. With the help of Shirin Tabor's girls, who I think are doing an amazing job, I had enough hope that, yes, these girls are going to be on the ground, bottom up, they're going to get everybody together. But it was, I can't tell you what my feeling was to go to Peshawar during a very turbulent time, walk into a Baha'i house of worship where a woman, Baha'i, lady is hosting it. She opens up her house, such a turbulent time to all the minorities. Shirin may recall Wagma Feroz, the young girl, and Eleni were standing there thinking nobody's going to come. This is Peshawar, nobody's going to come. And in 15 minutes, the room was filled with minorities. Right. And not only that, the good news was that there were two Christian women who walked in. One was a teacher, one was a nurse, and they spoke their heart out. And the Hindu community, the Christian community, of course, there were gentlemen there as well. And what made me the happiest was I met an imam who had come, he'd driven, not really driven, but he'd actually come in a truck from the northern parts of the mountains of Pakistan. He was a mufti, an imam, to come and tell me that he believes in the Islam of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is inclusive and accepting of everybody. That was a really beautiful moment for me to feel validated that yes, I'm Sunni Muslim, and here's my brother, and he's standing here with me to support the minorities. I think that is the power of roundtables. Just having that safe space. Sadly, one of the nurse who had come, from the Christian community, she died recently. And she had said this to me. She said, I have never felt so safe in my life. And that's what everyone echoed. And I said, no, we're not taking pictures. And they all insisted. They made the rounds, they took a picture. Right. I think that is the power of bringing people of faith together. And I thank all of you, this IRF Secretariat leadership, for doing that. And, giving me also the chance to do some good in the world.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Let me turn it over to Eric when we talk about the regional works, and in particular in the EU, if you could share a little bit.
Yes, of course. Well, in the EU, we have set up the EU Roundtable, which is called the FORB, Freedom of Religion or Belief Roundtable Brussels EU. Here you say IRF and we say FORB. Right. It's the same word, in fact, but there is just an F in it. And we started in 2014 after a discussion here in Washington with Chris Sapel and Greg Mitchell, and it was very inspiring. We have had a lot of success during the years. We have a bit like in UK, but it took more time, more than 100 organizations participating to the roundtable. And we are very focused on getting success, meaning that we don't want only advocate for religious freedom, we want wins. And obviously, there are some wins that we can be proud of, and whether it is blocking bad legislations coming, having good resolutions passed, all that kind of stuff. But of course, it's far from what is needed to get religious freedom advanced at the correct level and having progress in religious freedom faster than in some places it goes down. So we are thinking for the next future of 3 ways to get more wins. One is internally having more people joining and having people joining and involving themselves more. And that's an open invitation to all your brothers and sisters and counterparts in Europe to join, because the more we can work, the more we can have wins. Then more externally, one thing is creating national roundtables all around Europe, because I guess the more we are also, the more roundtables we are, the more we can work together and get good wins. And the last point, I think, is working closely one each other, yes, from roundtable to roundtable, having common initiatives where we can join forces and get more wins through this, which means also working a lot with the Secretariat. Yeah. because this coordination is very important between us.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I think that's very important. Greg Mitchell is really saying we've got to have these roundtables established and then build them into regional partnerships that work together. That way you have a collective, united voice that speaks to those issues. Having said that, let me turn over to Reverend Devlin, the crazy man that runs into the fire everywhere he goes. But Reverend Devlin, if you could share a little bit about the work in Africa and
Yeah.
what you're doing. Please, a few
Yeah,
minutes.
hey everybody, Pastor William Devlin. I'm an international pastor in 18 war zones, Middle East, Central Asia, and Africa. So we welcome everybody to the summit, and we're so excited that you're here. If you can imagine with me, in one of the most tumultuous nations of the world, Sudan, if you can imagine an international religious freedom roundtable being there, it happened already. If you missed it, newsflash, October of 2020, thanks to the leadership of Ambassador Brownback and I call him the chairman, Greg Mitchell, they were the fuel in my fire because I have been working in Khartoum since 2006 at the invitation of then Foreign Minister Ali Ahmed Karti. And in 2019, we began to be excited, along with my co-chair, Tawfiq Osman Saleh, and we said, without any government funding, we're going to pull together the largest international religious freedom roundtable in Africa ever held in Khartoum, Sudan. I got to give a shout out to Greg and to Ambassador Sam and the other members of the roundtable here in Washington, D.C. And we had over 500 participants, including representatives of the government of Sudan there. We held a great two-day summit at Friendship Hall in Khartoum, Sudan. We had a declaration about religious freedom signed by all 500 participants. And Ambassador Sam, I think you said, and after you moved on from your job as Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom, I think you said that Khartoum, Sudan was one of the highlights of your tenure, if I could quote you on that. And so what happened after that? A year later, we were asked by His Excellency, the United Nations Special Rapporteur for Freedom of Religion and Belief, to hold a consultation with 25 Sudanese leaders. And then what's happened as a result of that, we have now established the East Africa International Religious Freedom Secretariat. If you can imagine religious freedom roundtables in Somalia, Somaliland, Eritrea, Ethiopia, that's some of the hard places, Uganda, Kenya, South Sudan. We will be meeting together there in Khartoum with representatives, leaders from those countries in December of 2022. So late December, please put that on your calendar. If you're not doing anything, come with me and Tawfiq Osman Saleh there to Khartoum, Sudan for the first East Africa International Religious Freedom Secretariat. So please come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reverend Devlin. And to wrap this up, I want to give a hand. That's right. I mean, this is amazing.
Thank you to Greg
work.
and Ambassador Sam.
It's amazing work, and from the leadership of Greg Mitchell, Ambassador Brownback, and the hard work that all of you do makes it successful. Without you, the leaders can't do anything. So we appreciate all of you. But let me just close this up with Sir Charles. With the work that's going on in the UK and the EU area and the fact of the ministerial next week, you can just kind of share a little bit about that and where you see the work going forward.
Yes, I think Fiona and the ministers, Lord Ahmed, were absolutely determined to step up and offer to host the ministerial this year. Obviously, we've had a very difficult period with COVID-19, but there was huge commitment, in part because of Bishop Philip's independent review, for the UK to make a stand. And I think we also, I guess, our relationship with our European Union partners has been changing in the last few years too. Part of the process the UK is going through is to try to rebuild some of our global relationships. We feel we have a huge opportunity to engage with our Commonwealth partners around the world, and a responsibility to see how that might apply to the FORB area too. We're hugely blessed with a wonderful, diverse community in London. We are one of the global cities. We, I think, have almost no religious community absent from London. That is an incredible privilege and a huge opportunity for us as well to engage in dialogue, discussion, and to make use of those communities back into their own homes and countries. So we just are so excited about the opportunity that London provides going forward.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We're so excited about that. And thank you to each and every one of you as leaders in the work and field you're doing. Let's give them a hand as I bring Greg back up. Amen. Thank you very much.
All right, this is the closing, preview panel, and then we'll get you out of here by 8:30, I think. Kuzat Alte and Simran Singh Stoopnagel. Nadine, you want to come back up too for the closing here? This panel, we can probably do this in 7-8 minutes. One of the things we're talking about, and Simran is a businessman. He's vice chair of Secretariat, but he's a businessman. Kuzat, you heard him speak yesterday. He's also a businessman, focused on empowering people. And Nadine and I are. But real quick, what we've been talking about, Brian Grimm, he's on our Global Leadership Council also. He's done a lot of work with the Religious Freedom and Business Foundation about, his work, he's doing tremendous work building religious freedom inside workplaces. And working with some of the biggest companies in the world. But Kuzat and I and Simran and I have been talking about, externally, like if religious freedom inside the workplace is great, but how can we get businesses, engaging governments as well? Not just inside their workplace, but looking outward and working with civil society and engaging governments. And because since I've been going around the world setting up these roundtables, some of the business leaders, and the more people hear Brian Grimm's research, that the more religious freedom there is, the more economic development and more economic prosperity there is. Business leaders start coming up saying, how can we, they kind of they're looking for ideas on how they can engage. Now, they're not going to sit at a religious freedom roundtable and share stories of persecution, but they're looking for some kind of vehicle, some kind of new way for them to engage, and in order to not only secure religious freedom, but economic freedom and prosperity. So there's kind of an idea developing, and then this could be a strategic initiative that we develop. I started brainstorming with Kuzat on this and Tezcan out here at their great new facility in Northern Virginia. But is it possible for like a freedom and prosperity roundtable for business owners and executives who actually want to engage governments, in order to help secure religious freedom, but economic freedom as well? But Kuzat, I want to go to you first and just, 2 minutes, like what do you think? This is a preview of something that's starting, an idea that's starting to develop.
Yeah, nothing in particular. Me and Tezcan, after my father was taken to a concentration camp, in 2019 we went to London for human rights work, and we had to go to Brussels, and I think we were spending like $30,000 in that trip. I was like, okay, I want to, as a businessman, I want to support a cause for human rights, but how do we make it sustainable? If each trip costs me $30,000, this is not sustainable. If my business goes down, who can I help? Imagine there's a destination called Better World, and our business is our vehicle to take us there, and who's going to benefit if our boat is going down? So inspired by that, I just randomly called for a sales event in London, And I made a sales speech. And we started doing business in Europe while traveling in there. So the main goal of that is literally making it sustainable. So in a business, I'm sorry for bringing this up, but it's my analogy. You have El Chapo, who's making $18 billion. Not now, but his revenue was $18 billion. And because he was hiding his cash, the cash that is water damaged and eaten by rats, $2 billion, right? So the more money El Chapo makes, the more people die, so which is very evil and bad. And on the other hand, you have Mother Teresa, right? She's amazing. She wants to help people. But how many people she can help? It's not sustainable because it's based on donation. So what we think about is, how do we marry purpose and a profit to make it sustainable? This is the idea. This is not the answer. So maybe hundreds of people coming around the world every year like this. I'm pretty sure we have business people here. I'm pretty sure there are people that want to be entrepreneurs, right? So when this important people coming all around the world, maybe we can do something, started from discussion, knowing each other, identifying opportunity, what can we do together to make more money and to make the world a better place?
Simran, what do you think?
Thank you for that. There's a real tension between communities who have a tremendous number of victims and then the success that should come after that. We know it from these summits, from many events. We ask people sometimes whether or not they want to tell their victim story, and they go, no, we actually want to tell our success story. We know what happened to us, but we've also overcome. And a huge business and really economic liberty is the great stabilizer after persecution. So as faith groups, when we lobby governments, the first thing we need to do is ask them to liberate their economies and make them accessible to all. That's something we can do as a group. But then what happens next, I want to share two what I think are incredibly powerful examples on how that plays, and these are from within the United States. One is the U.S. security business, which the Sikh community has been involved in. Now, in World War I, there are Sikh soldiers in U.S. Army uniforms. In World War I and II, there are hundreds of thousands of Sikhs who were killed or injured defeating the Nazis. In the 80s, Sikhs lost their right to serve in U.S. military uniform here. So what we did, so now we have our kids who obviously feel excluded. Why can't I be a police officer? Why can't I be in the Army or in the Air Force or wherever? It hurts. It stings. You don't know what to tell your kids. You don't even know what to tell yourself. You already had hundreds of thousands die. So we started a security company. It was started in '82. That security company, over time, got government contracts from the U.S. federal government. It started with us in the state of New Mexico. The company's called A Call Security. A call means undying in Gurmukhi, and we started getting state contracts. Remember, we got the state fair. It was a huge celebration. Our founder graduated first in the Albuquerque Law Enforcement Academy and then wouldn't get hired because he had the turban. I think there were 300 in the graduating class. He started a security company. Over time, that became the largest privately held security contractor supporting the U.S. government. And get this, the largest private employer of retired American police officers in the world. We had 5,500 American police officers on our payroll with the same people who were prevented from serving themselves. That's the power of business. That became the largest privately held company in the state of New Mexico. Our Homeland Security contracts, our people in turbans still couldn't serve in uniform on the contracts. 3,000 of them were here in downtown DC. We couldn't get our people in uniform, but we had the money then and the relationships to have that conversation. We ended up working for the State Department in 120 countries, 16,000 employees, and I was the head of corporate strategy eventually. And one of my final projects was security at the El Chapo trial in Brooklyn. We had over 100 armed officers there, retired American police officers. Out of respect for the judiciary, we tried them in Brooklyn, arguably the most dangerous man in the world, and we got to participate. Now explain that as the American dream. That's economic liberty. Now we get to serve again. We have hundreds and hundreds of police officers. We're in the military again, and 2 years ago we sold the company. And that money is a venture capital, is doing venture capital work. Now we divested in trucking, in solar energy, in lawn, gardening supplies. And it's an unbelievable success. And thanks to, even when America had a sad moment in discrimination, business could pick up the slack and re-inspire our kids. Two, and I'll be quick, we love to laugh about, certain demographics who own 7-Elevens, right? There was a Sikh genocide in the 80s in India. A tremendous amount came here, didn't speak much English, weren't educated in our system, but they could figure out how to run grocery stores. And we smile about it. There's jokes about it in The Simpsons. I actually love the jokes. I don't like being so PC. I love the jokes. When they came here where there's economic liberty, they figure out, they're so economically disciplined. They save. Within 10 years, they're owning 5 of them. Later, they add 10 gas stations. This is a normal story. Their kids, they drill them through high school, and they're going to the Ivy Leagues. So within a half generation, you have an incredibly stable community here, 500,000 American Sikhs. And the governor of New Jersey just appointed the first term attorney general in U.S. history because our community and Hoboken elected a Sikh mayor with a turban, and we just got the first judge in history elected. It's because the first judge with a turban elected in a county in U.S. history. It's all because of economic development, which our American model makes possible.
So last question, is it possible, do you think, to get like a lot of these businesses to like come together and start engaging governments, not only to develop the model you're talking about to help empower their communities, but to engage governments and start working more in partnership with governments on public policy and improving public policy to strengthen the rule of law and secure religious freedom, but fundamental, freedoms?
Well, just look at the call center industry in India. And then the IT, most of our software is development there. If India hadn't overcome the religious instability that its neighboring countries had, it couldn't access its human capital to provide millions and millions of jobs. So we are in the middle of corporations trying to lobby to make that happen. We actually need to help them do it. The middle ground of that happening, I think it would have stabilized Pakistan if we could have gotten it done. 15 years ago, call centers were trying to move in and couldn't. Bangladesh is a little bit on the tipping point, but the only way for businesses to access human capital that's locked up in conflict zones and discrimination zones around the planet is through religious liberty. We're losing, our global GDP is, tanks without that liberty. And I think in my view, we have to help them do it. We have to do it together. And I think they'll be willing partners.
Did you have a thought on that?
Obviously, I believe that is not possible under Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah.
The party needs to go down. But other than that, I think this is farming rather than hunting. It's a very long-term goal, and it will work over time.
Yeah. Nadine?
I was going to say that I have Charmaine Heading here with me, who has started over 70 businesses in the Nineveh Plains with $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 grants with religious minority communities, in mostly family businesses like paint stores, mechanics, stationery, just run-of-the-mill kind of stores, And so I've been talking, in particular in Texas, with business communities to come alongside some of these religious minority communities. As you know, USERF recommended lifting sanctions in Northeast Syria to give people an opportunity to build a future for their families. I do think that the businesses would be interested in coming alongside with some of these type of initiatives. But I agree with you. I think there is a place where business leaders could politicians are very intrigued by them, right?
Yeah.
Especially, coming from here, going across to different parts of the world with some business leaders to talk about how important it is to have religious freedom so that they can invest in that country. So I do think that we have to start thinking out of the box. These are the kind of things we need to think about, like how can we do things differently? And we'd love, of course, your guys' input on people that might be interested in being a part of all of this.
Great, thank you all, thank you.
To follow that real quick, I had a deputy head of state told me that after all these years in politics, the one person he still respected was a corporate CEO. And I don't think he knew enough of them, but that respect is there and can definitely be used for us.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We've reached the end. Thanks for staying with us. But this just gives you a preview of what we're setting out to do. And so you're all welcome to participate with your ideas and inputs, because as you can see, we're going to be working with, this is just a handful, but we're going to be working with lots and lots of groups to find out what's working and try to build on that. So if you have ideas, please share. So thank you, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.